Okay, welcome back to another episode, a special episode actually, of Policy for Normal People. I'm your host, Christy Amata. This show is sponsored by my consulting firm, Amata Development Services, LLC. You can check it out at amatadevservices.com. I am welcoming back today, and it's my great pleasure to do so, Marcus Sturdivant Sr. of the ABC Squared. Marcus provides market analysis and financial services to help Main Street meet Wall Street. What a great tagline, as I've said in the past. Marcus, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Christy. Excited to be back on here with you again. It's always a great time when we get to sit down and just chat for a little while.
Absolutely, absolutely. And folks, if you've listened to previous podcasts, this is a little different. We're experimenting, Marcus and I, with what we're going to call the monthly market moment with Market Sturdivant. So at the end of each month, we're doing a very quick kind of 15 to 20-minute episode that just covers what's been happening in the market. And then I'll tie in a policy question somewhere in there, since this is policy for normal people, after all. So let's get started. Marcus, there's nothing happening in the market at all right now, right? It's super calm, cool waters. Yeah.
Right, I know.
Not entirely, right? Yeah. So could you give us a quick overview for the month of August? Just hit some highlights about what you've been seeing in your market observations, what's going on. We know, of course, that as we speak, I think the hearing for Lisa Cook's firing is taking place and what may happen there, an injunction or otherwise. So lots of stuff going on. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Marcus, to give us a little bit of some roundup for a month of August. What have you got?
Gotcha. Yeah, so for the month of August, people are generally, on vacation. People are getting ready to go back to school. So as far as like investing, that's usually a light month for the stock market. Usually August, September, they have what you call the fall. This August actually has been a little bit different. It's been boosted by some data that has led the markets to believe that we'll be getting a rate cut next month at the September Fed, this next month's meeting of the Federal Office of Monetary Committee, the Fed meeting in September. So they're thinking we're getting a 25% base cut, just based on Chairman Powell's speech last week at Jackson Hole. He just came out far more dovish than people expected. I think the data is showing that the uh, spending and government is slowing down. Well, maybe not the spending in government, but the overall GDP is slowing down. So growth is slowing down. We just got revised numbers that revised some of the numbers up, but it's still below the pace that we were expecting for GDP. So with the news from Jackson Hole, and then some companies just producing some great earnings reports, the stock market actually was up in August. It's actually been up for the month, led by like small caps. Small caps tend to work better with rate cuts, but the market's been up. It's seeing what it wants to see right now. It's in a Goldilocks area as far as like the stock market. The housing market seems to be waiting on rate cuts. Starts, that's a bumpy thing. I think the housing market will look to improve. We'll still improve in the second half. We saw some improvement in those stocks as well, that area of the market, just with people anticipating rate cuts coming down, hoping that that will in turn lower the mortgage rates. And then as far as, like you said, with the Federal Reserve, it's been a big month just testing the limits of what exactly is Fed independence, what executive powers the actual branch of the executive office possesses. And then, of course, it all ends up in a judicial setting to see. So we're seeing the branches of government all work together, I guess, or maybe against each other, depending on your view. So the market's been churning. The stock market that's been going up, like without the news, makes sense just because, like I said, companies are reporting good earnings. Bank of America saying consumers are still spending. Unemployment, that number's been pretty consistent. Like we're pretty much at full employment. The difference with the unemployment is the duration just continues to grow. So if you lose your job, you may be unemployed longer versus before. So
Yeah, I've definitely, I can definitely speak to that. The amount of people that I've met. Of course, I live in the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia, Northern Virginia area. So a lot of federal workers here. So lots of job loss. I know quite a few people, friends, and so forth that have unfortunately been a victim of that. And that of course is occurring, throughout the country and other industries too. What do you see in terms of hiring relative to the market changes and fluctuations that are going on? Is hiring slowing down? Is it kind of stabilized? Do you see companies kind of just waiting to invest in more workers versus maybe technology or innovation? What do you see going on there? Is it just too early to know how that's going to land?
So it's all mixed in, right? So you have companies that were on hold waiting to see where we would end up with tariffs, which is still a process just to see how tariffs are going to impact companies' cost, impact companies' revenue. We just got the big beautiful bill, one big beautiful bill, however you want to summarize it, passed in July. So people are still working through the effects of that. That really released some capital spending as far as businesses go. So yeah, companies, and as far as the actual unemployment number, like I said, that number may go up or it may go down, but it's pretty much in that 4.2, 4.5 range is where it's been pretty much around the same time. So percentage of people employed pretty much stay the same. Like I said, we're pretty much fully employed. But once you lose a job, to your point, companies are not as quick to hire people. Part of that could be some of the murkiness in the data, some of the murkiness in the rate cuts, some of the murkiness in tariffs and spending, and some of it could just be AI efficiencies increasing the actual productivity of people and requiring companies to hire less workers. You see a lot of companies, big companies now, Microsoft and other companies, some of these snowflake companies like these, they're just coming out saying they're not hiring as many people to do tasks anymore as AI has taken over some of those.
Yeah, interesting that you bring that up with AI, Marcus. I am in the myself in the process of following some courses to get certified in corporate communications, to take it sort of to that level, because I've worked with nonprofits more so so far. But I took a course just now on generative AI for written communication, and a lot of concerns came up among my peers in that class. This was with Cornell University, great class, about what kind of jobs AI is going to replace. And the opinion of the professor seemed to be, and he's an engineer, been involved with this kind of technology for a long time, so he's watching the trends for quite a long period. He said definitely it's going to affect healthcare, and it's going to affect computer tech engineering jobs. So some of the STEM jobs, depending upon what you actually do in terms of the function that you perform. So it's really interesting. I think there's a mix of fear and excitement and optimism out there all at once about it. And I know I use it a lot in my job. Do you use AI in your job much?
I use AI sometimes maybe just for like editing purposes. I don't particularly use it that deep for research, just with the hallucinations that AI will give you. Yeah, AI definitely can help you with like some administrative tasks as far as that goes. So I
Yeah.
definitely uh, use AI in those capacities. And people, as far as it goes with AI, like whether you love it, hate it, you probably should dig in and try to understand it, at least understand how it works, because that technology is coming. People worry about, and I know it's not a one for one comparison, but you think back with technological advances throughout history, right? So just think back in the 90s, 80s, 90s when they came out with ATMs. Everyone thought all tellers were going to lose their
I
jobs,
remember that.
right?
Yeah.
But what you
Big deal.
found is tellers didn't particularly lose their jobs. They were just found other places to work in the bank, right? They just found other efficiencies or different ways to use them. So I kind of look at it more that way with AI. Like, yes, people are going to lose their jobs, but it will become more efficient. People will become more efficient in the AIs and the game in AI, and the gains should, in theory, should outweigh the cost. And we are getting to a point where people are wanting to see all this money we've been investing in these AI companies. They're wanting to see returns from it. That's starting to come up in 26, 27 for sure.
Yeah, I expect they are. Yeah, because quite a bit of capital has been directed towards that investment, and I'm sure that people are anxious to see a return. Very interesting stuff. We'll keep an eye on it for sure. Hit a little bit, if you would, on just your thoughts about the Lisa Cook situation. Obviously we don't want to focus on politics in this show, what the political opinions are around it, but just are there any pragmatic implications from that you see in terms of affecting market decisions, or maybe not?
Gotcha. So yeah, let me preference this with saying I'm not a legal expert, and I think even the legal experts are saying this is kind of like unprecedented territory as far as where we have
Yes.
right now. She's being fired. The court hearing is happening right now to see whether they'll have an injunction or a stay to allow her to go to work, or think right now her official status is that she's been traveling for work, so they don't really know if she's been in the building or if she's been working for the Fed. In her capacity, she's obviously filed suit against the Trump administration, also against the Federal Reserve Board. She filed that in an effort to, I think, protect the board from any actions that may come from the executive branch if they were not to enforce some of the things that President Trump has inquired with this firing. So as far as it goes, like I don't think anyone's produced any evidence yet. I don't think she's formally been charged yet. So we can't get too far ahead of like what it really is. And some of this stuff predates her time as Federal Reserve official, right? So let's say, and this isn't unprecedented in the fact that Federal Reserve officials have had incidents before with different things, and they usually just kind of resign. But I think the way this is set up is this is a different case just to see the executive power versus what you can actually be done with the federal governance. What is actually firing for cause, right? That's the big thing. What is the cause? Are allegations cause? Because until like the actual charges have been filed or she's been found guilty, they're just allegations, correct? So could you just fire anyone for allegations? Is this a bigger play towards Chairman Powell? On a larger implication, globally, people look for the independence of the Fed as the American dollar is the global currency, right? So if they look and see that perhaps the Fed can be influenced by another branch of government, is truly not independent, that would definitely decrease some of our faith within the international community as far as our stability. And I mean, people have seen what happened when they allow their monetary policy to be pushed by governments who usually want lower interest rates, right? Because they're paying back their debt with lower interest rates. Things are housing works with lower interest rate, but lower interest rates cuts both ways. So the independence of the Fed at the end of the day is very important. I can't speak to whether Governor Cook is guilty, innocent. I don't think Governor Cook's even been charged yet. So like right now we're sitting here and they're having the hearing right now. So we don't know. So
But it's definitely a educational opportunity moment, isn't it? To just for everyone to kind of pay attention to just what it means in terms of the relationship between, governance and finance, in the country and how the government interplays and intersects at different times in different ways with the financial policies that come down. And that kind of leads us into sort of somewhat policy related question I was going to ask, sort of the one question, I'm going to do one question on these monthly calls for our Main Street folks, and that includes me. What is a basic definition of the difference between monetary policy and fiscal policy? When you hear both of those, and what are each of those, and how do they differ?
all right. Yeah, that's a good question. Right. So monetary policy usually affects the supply of money, right? So, and that's done from the Federal Office of Monetary Committee or the Board of Governors, Federal Board of Governors. There are different banks, central banks all around the country, make one big central bank, right? They control money supply, interest rates. Their main focus is inflation and jobs, right? They want to make sure that we have an optimal inflation rate and full employment. So those are their tools. That's what they focus on, monetary policy, right? Fiscal policy on the other side is more from the Congress, the executive branch, the legislative side of it. The Treasury Secretary vested people of those means. So think about the big, beautiful bill. That was fiscal policy. So it goes in involving tax cuts or how we will go about not interest rates, but like tax cuts or extended tax cuts, deductions, things of that sort. That's more going to be towards your fiscal policy. How we're paying the debt is also fiscal policy, right? How much the debt's going to be is fiscal policy, right? So that's another thing. Like as you hear, in the ideal world, the fiscal policy works independently of monetary policy, but they all work together in the sense that if the deficit's out of control, hopefully the rates that we're paying back on this money, which is set by the monetary policy, the interest rates, hopefully they're optimal for us to be able to service this debt while not increasing the debt, but not so low that we're just going to let inflation run wild, let spending go out of control. So it's a really delicate walk. But just generally think with monetary policy, think money supply, how much you have. Fiscal policy, think federal, think legislative, think policy, or think legislation. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. It absolutely does. And I've done a good bit of self-education on those two as well. I've been into a big book by Alan Binder, who or Blinder, I think it is, who was a former, I think, Fed official at some time, and economics professor and all. And I always find it really interesting how economists talk about each of those types of policies versus, say, someone in the more political analytical media or something like that can often be very different in terms of how they evaluate what is good for an economy, what's not, and where we fall in between. I think it's definitely, as complex as those two are, I think it's important for people to understand, and I know I want to continue to understand it better, that they do impact each other, and the decision's kind of a very much a action reaction kind of situation, right?
Right. I mean, think about with fiscal policy, they in the original Tax Cut Job Act of 2017, they lowered the corporate tax rate, right? So that corporations weren't paying as much for taxes. That should increase the amount of money they have to spend for hiring, right? They made that permanent. So now you would think that even if on the other side, the monetary policy was to lower interest rates to increase more money for businesses to hire people. So that's how they could also work together. Even if the interest rates were to go up, you would go up a little bit, which takes time for that to flow through to businesses. You would still have the lower corporate tax rate. You see these lower deductions and tax rates on the fiscal policy that should stimulate small businesses to spend. And if they're stimulated to spend, the monetary policy on that side is they're going to need to get money from banks at hopefully lower interest rates.
Yeah, and good point about the lagging indicators, right? I mean, the impact factors, they take a while to take hold, both in what you just described and then also with inflation. It takes a while. There may be some initial cost push inflation in various areas that's not relevant to the whole economy. And I think we've seen some of that. So it's still kind of early, I think, to really tell what's going to happen, like after about 2 to 3 years, as these policies are firmly in place and businesses have had a time to adjust and things. Would you agree that we'll have a better view of what the long term may look like?
Oh yeah, we're in it right now. We're in the middle of it. We can't see all the stuff around us, like how this is all going to play out. People are
Yeah,
basing things on their projections, but it's really unprecedented the things that are happening in our economy right now and the way they're happening. Just different types of with the whole global trade rebalancing, the whole another thing that we have to think about with monetary policy and fiscal policy is immigration, right? And the job market. So we have fiscal policy that's becoming more or legislation that's more restrictive on immigration. Hence, it's going to lower the amount of people who are able to come into the workforce because a lot of the workforce has been driven by immigration, legal or illegal. That's a whole nother topic, right?
sure,
So
sure.
companies were slow to hire in that sense as well because they didn't want to necessarily hire someone who could just be picked up from the job.
Yeah. But would it also, is there also a potential opportunity for native born and existing immigrants here to pick up some of those jobs where there's less competition with immigration? Is it kind of a double-edged sword that way?
Right. And that's the kind of stuff. It's definitely an opportunity for anyone for other people to step into those voids. Maybe there are jobs they want, maybe there are jobs they don't want. Uh, I don't know. It depends on the visa, depends on the job.
I think it's going to have a more of an impact perhaps with your higher paid jobs like the H-1B types where you're looking at STEM jobs, because I know there's been fierce competition between the H-1B immigrant that's newly arrived or sponsored by their employer versus the native born American or green card holder, for example, permanent immigrant here legally in the United States that is maybe graduating from our colleges and universities, especially in STEM jobs. I know it's really affected them, and it'd be interesting to see if maybe there's a balancing act that happens there. Policy certainly is reshaping that, so it'll be interesting to see how that lands. Again, it'll take some time to really see. I can appreciate what you're saying too, though. The lower paid labor jobs, agricultural, dairy, meat packing, that kind of thing, as those numbers decrease with immigration, it'll be interesting to see whether or not the agricultural industry will decide to mechanize where they maybe could have done that a long time ago, but still relied on the cheap labor, or for areas where maybe that's not possible, maybe there'll be some kind of balance struck between do we need immigrants to do that versus is it really true that Americans won't do the jobs if you pay a better wage and you provide security, safety, and benefits, which unfortunately those kind of things don't get offered to illegal immigrants or illegal aliens. So
Right. Or will those jobs just fade away like with the printing press?
exactly. I
Or
had a
even
great
more,
grandfather who was a telegraph operator. You're not going to find that anymore.
right? Or telephone operators, like the literal operators who would move the
Oh
line,
yeah.
or even sticking to agriculture, the cotton gin, right? That took a
There you
lot with like industrial revolution. And then as far as like the gross number of the people in the employment number. So that's what makes the Federal Reserve's job even more fluid because yeah, how many of those low volume, low earning income workers are out of the data that were immigrants, that were not immigrants, how much of that is being filled? It's just, yeah. So to answer your original question, this will be a case study for people some years from now. This time, just think about from COVID, that's going to be one. And then like from when we've come in, I think both Trump administrations will be, now obviously Biden's administration in the middle of it too. These things will be case studies just in history, like the way government's now industrializing. Government's always industrialized some things, but like just stepping into Intel and taking a stake in Intel, 10% stake in Intel for money from the CHIPS Act. This economy's flipping, the way government collects income now is changing. So it's just a fluid thing. Excited to be able to do this every month with you because
Yeah, you too.
for an hour
I
every
learned
month.
so much from you, and I hope that our listeners appreciate that and enjoy it too. And that does bring us to the end of our time. We may have actually appropriated just a few more extra minutes than 15, but that's okay. Great stuff, Marcus. Thanks for that overview. And folks, if you're enjoying the show, we hope you are. We hope you get some benefit from it. I know I do. That's the whole point of why I started it. I'm bringing on experts like Marcus who can talk to us about the various policy related issues and market. So thanks, Marcus. I'll look forward to seeing you again to do a roundup next month. And folks, do visit him at LinkedIn. The ABC Squared is the name of his business. Enjoy the Labor Day weekend coming up, everyone. And we'll see you next month. Have a good one, Marcus.
Thanks. You too, Christy. See y'all next month.
Take care.